Anderson Ezeibe, who is the president of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, joins us right now. I don't know why I always say association, maybe because of the doctors. But a number of issues that your union now has raised, with the government. You had gone into a meeting before now with the Minister of Education. Is that correct?
Yes, very correct.
Why do you think it was difficult to come up with a solution to some of the issues that you raised?
Well, these issues have lingered over time. Quite a number of them have been as old as 10 years. And then there are, of course, new ones, that came up. As a trade union, we are not that used to going on strike on industrial actions. Last year, the ultimatum leading to this particular strike was issued last year, as far back as March of last year. But because of the COVID lockdown, little could be done. When we resumed sometime in October last year, we had thought that we had given the government ample time and opportunity, to look at the issues that were raised. Within that period also, of course, new issues came up. For instance, the issue of the governing councils that were dissolved in May of 2020. And you know that the governing councils sit at the apex of governance and administration, for the institutions. Now, for all the federal polytechnics in Nigeria since May last year, there are no governing councils. The implication is that principal officers cannot be appointed. But, by principal officers, we mean chief executives like rectors, bursars, registrars, librarians. They cannot be appointed. Staff appraisal processes cannot be concluded because it is the governing councils, that promote staff. And so, and then, the right level of control, because the governing council controls the activities of the management, exercises control measures over, over the management. And so this, this particular structure is not in place. A lot of the institutions, the principal officers, have been in acting capacity since then. That is not healthy. That's not how to run an institution, a tertiary institution. That is not, the way it should be. In the States, it's even worse. A lot of them don't even have governing councils at all. They operate with obsolete laws. So the issues have been there.
So no governing council, and in turn, because there's no governing councils, those ones cannot appoint principal officers. But in the next breath, you also raise a question about the quality of principal officers being appointed, for instance, rectors. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, the issue actually starts with the quality in the governing councils. By law, by the provisions of the Federal Polytechnics Amendment Act 2019, there's a certain prescription as to the caliber of, Nigerians that can be nominated into these governing councils by the federal government. These are, people, who have a minimum of HND, and then people who have, interests in technical and vocational education. Because if you don't have interest in the system, then, then you shouldn't come there. And we have been advocating. We are saying that the system in itself has developed enough capacity over the years. The oldest polytechnic is Yaba College of Technology, established in 1949. And since then, there are so many polytechnics, first generation, second generation, third generation, and new ones are still coming up. We are saying that the system has developed enough capacity to populate governing councils. What do I mean by this? We have people who have served out creditably as principal officers, whether as bursars, as rectors, and all. You will be doing the system a lot of good if you bring them back as, as council members, to come and, give back to the system.
So you also had issue with the kinds of people who were in the governing councils before now, even before they were dissolved.
Of course.
So were they dissolved because of your complaints?
Well, no, their time, ran out. They are supposed to have a tenure of 3 years, but then, of course, we had issues with just bringing any person who comes there and, all he does is to, look out for contracts, pursuing contracts, leaves, the primary assignment, and then violates laws with impunity. We just finished a court case, with two governing councils, the last two, governing councils, of course, the Federal Ministry of Education and the Federal Ministry of Justice, we are all involved. And we are talking about respect for laws. Why is it that you have laws in place and appointees of the government will decide to violate these laws? an act of parliament signed into law by the president, and then the president's appointees decide to go against these same laws with impunity in tertiary institutions. If we don't have sanity in education, then we've lost it.
So those are some of the issues that you have raised. I mean, there are also some that are, really sad to see. For instance, the fact that no polytechnic across Nigeria was considered for the Energized Nigeria initiative, or Energized Education initiative. And I'm sure that all of these issues were tabled in the meeting that you had. What was the outcome of that meeting, and why did you still see it fit to call the strike?
Well, the meeting we had actually served more or less to introduce the issues, speak to the issues before the minister and before the media and other officials of the Federal Ministry of Education. It's not very proper that we were not given that kind of opportunity until about 6 to 7 hours into the strike. So we are currently waiting to be properly invited, in a normal conciliation process, so that the line items, because there are quite a number of items there, the line items can now be trashed out one after the other.
Interestingly, only one of the items it would seem had to do with money, where you talked about minimum wage not being paid, arrears of minimum wage not being paid, and I think some tax issues. The wording around tax, though, raises a lot of questions. It makes it seem as if you are allergic, that members of your union are allergic to paying tax. I'm looking for the right words now, looking for the exact words which you use here. You talked about plans by the Accountant General of the Federation to deduct over 19 billion naira on the pretext of recovering purported pay-as-you-earn tax liabilities from 19 federal polytechnics. Our union views this attempt as dubious, painted in different colors of impunity, and capable of further pauperizing our members. The claims are unverified, unreconciled, offensive to extant laws, and therefore unacceptable to our members who have diligently and over the years been bearing the brunt of unacceptable tax regimes with little or no social benefits for political leadership in their respective states. If the Accountant General of the Federation says that, certain taxes have not been remitted, isn't it within his remit to collect the taxes?
The issue is, how did he arrive at the fact that certain taxes were not paid? We are talking about purported tax liabilities between 2002 to 2018. Now, within that period, there are some institutions that were given tax liabilities, and yet they were not in existence within that period. For instance, Federal Polytechnic Bali was established, sometime in 2007, 2008. Waziri Umaru Federal Polytechnic Kebbi, was also established about the same time. The one in Kazaure, the same thing. And then you are telling them that they have tax liabilities from 2002. Now, what about the institutions that have been in existence since then? I come from Federal Polytechnic Nekede. We are given a purported tax liability of 2.4 billion. And then within 2002 to 2018, several staff, assuming, but without conceding that actually, there are these, liabilities. Some of the staff who have these liabilities have retired, left service. Some are late by now, certainly. Some are no longer, in service. So, and then, you engaged staff, recently. Are you now trying to transfer the burden of persons who have retired from service, who are no longer in service, by whatever cause? Are you now going to transfer the burden of their tax liabilities to, to people who are not supposed to carry it? Now, and that's why we are saying that it is not reconciled, it is not verified. The letters they wrote claimed, that they came for reconciliation, but no single federal polytechnic accepts this. The federal polytechnics, by law, are tax agents, non-paying tax agents, because they are the people that actually, collect these, taxes from members and remit to the State Board of Internal Revenue, because we are talking about, the pay-as-you-earn tax here, so it is staff that pay, not the institution. Now, they are not consulted. These institutions have chief executives. You can't make payments on my behalf without my consent. The Accountant General of the Federation or his, privates or, whatever, cannot claim to have made payments. Because, for instance, the one in Federal Polytechnic, Nekede, they claim to have made 50% of payment already on behalf, of the staff, and that they are going to recover the money. Now, who authorized the payment? You can't make payments on my behalf, without my consent. So that's why we are saying that it's very difficult to, to see laws that support what has just taken place and, what is also about, to take place. And that is what we mean by that particular issue.
So what has been the reaction? Because some of these issues are not directly under the purview of the Ministry of Education. Have you been to the Ministry of Finance, for instance, or the Accountant General's office, more specifically, to say what is going on here? We have issues with your attempts to try and collect this amount of money from our members.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have it on record that almost all the federal polytechnics have rejected the claims in writing because, they were communicated in writing and they have also responded in writing. A lot of them, almost all, rejected the claims. And then on the issue of our position on the matter, that's why we are calling for, formal meetings where there are other agencies of government involved in the issues, contained in our strike. And we feel that during a normal conciliation process, that all those agencies of government, like the Office of the Accountant General, Head of Civil Service of the Federation, our regulatory body, the MBTE, the Federal Ministry of Education, of course, and then we'll also have our trade union center, that is the Nigerian Labour Congress, with us. And then we can start trashing out the issues so that people will be made to take responsibility, or, with respect to the line items.
So how many of these, issues do you think needs to be taken up first? Or to what point do you think it needs to be answered before you would say, okay, we think that there is enough seriousness on, answering our demand, and then we can call off the strike, or at least we can go back to work?
Okay. We need the government of Nigeria to demonstrate some very visible seriousness with respect to the implementation of the Needs Assessment Report of 2014. You can't send committees all over the nation since 2014, funded them with taxpayers' monies. They visited institutions. Ab initio, you sent them because you realize the fact that there are funding deficits. There are gaps in infrastructure in these institutions. They are supposed to go and see for themselves, verify the claims, come back, and then recommend what should be done. And then since 2014, that report has been gathering dust in the Federal Ministry of Education. No single step has been taken. In 2017, we brought out that issue once more. We are told that there is paucity of funds, that the sum of 25 billion naira is going to be released to the sector for revitalization, as a stopgap measure. From that 2017 till date, not a penny has been released. So we'd like to see the government demonstrate, a lot of seriousness by releasing that revitalization fund. We even understand the fact, that the inflationary trend in the nation has already even eroded the sums that we are mentioning, but government needs to be seen to be serious, with the findings of his own committee. We want to see a situation where, the New Minimum Wage Act is a law. It's a law. It took effect from April 2019. 2 years down the line, that law is being violated also by the government. The president directed in that by December 2019, staff of all ministries, departments, and agencies of the government should be paid. No staff in any of the federal polytechnics have been paid the 10 months arrears we are owed. It's just about 4 billion from our own estimation. And we think that the government can show some seriousness in offsetting this bill. We desire, a government that will show some, more, some measure of seriousness with respect to its supervisory roles and regulatory functions. We understand the fact that ownership of these institutions is found in the concurrent list. But we know that regulation, that is, setting up of standards, is on the exclusive list. And that is why we have just one regulatory body. We have states, for instance, in Abia State, our members, they are owed for 24 months, 2 years. So what type of standards are you going to get there? Teaching, you want to tell me that teaching and learning is going on in that place? It's not true. There can't be teaching, there can't be learning going on where you're owing people for 2 years. And then we expect to have a supervisory body, a regulatory agency that will whip these people into line. In that same institution, in the past 5 years, we've had 5 different chief executives. We've had about 3 different governing councils. We've had about 4 bursars and 3 registrars, all in one institution in a space of 5 years. You can't run an institution like this. It is not compulsory to establish a polytechnic. If you're not ready to fund, if you're not ready to regulate, if you're not, ready to supervise, then don't establish ones. But the contradiction here is this: new polytechnics are being established. New polytechnics are being established. Recently, the federal government established 7 new ones, or announced into existence 7 new polytechnics, federal polytechnics. And then, if you get to the National Assembly, our legislators are falling over themselves and trying to cite pass one law or the other to cite one polytechnic or the other in their constituencies. And yet the existing ones are suffering in serious neglect. Neglect in terms of funding, neglect in terms of supervision, neglect in terms of regulation of standards.
It is very sad indeed. I mean, when you hear that some members have not been paid for 24 months, it's very, very worrisome.
It's happening. You can verify.
But nonetheless, some of these institutions, I mean, some people will say that if you look all around, I mean, your sister agencies in universities, I mean, unions in the universities as well, have also been up in arms. It was only recently that they called off, one of their strikes. You look in the healthcare sector as well, doctors are currently on strike. So, I mean, the issues are broad. There are many. A lot of people will talk about how, the education sector took a hit during the coronavirus lockdown and the general pandemic. The education of students have been on hold for a while. You heard some of your students there complaining about how their lives seem to be on hold. And the fact that it was seen that the new academic year has started and they're still going to write exams anyway. What would you be saying to them? I mean, they're watching what is going on. They're wondering what is going on in their country. They really want their lecturers to be paid. But if you were to talk to them, if you had an opportunity to address them, what would you say to them?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, and I know that our students actually understand that we've been a very considerate union. Like I said, the ultimatum for this particular action was issued in March 2020. When the lockdown was eased, we were under pressure by our members to declare an industrial dispute, to join our university counterparts on strike. It was the wisdom of our National Executive Council and indeed, some of our congresses that we should, give more time, because of the impact of the COVID. And 6 months down the line, we've not had, any form of attention from the government, leading to this particular action. And for the students also, the truth is that we are struggling against a systematic demarketing of the sector. What do I mean by this? If you consult the JAMB figures with respect to applications, it is easy to come out with 1.7 million applicants for JAMB in a particular year, 1.9 for 2020 and thereabouts. If you look at the number of Nigerian youths applying to go into the polytechnics, it's about 1%, consistently for the past 4 years. About 1%. For the universities, I think University of Ilorin is at the peak, with about, more than 100,000 applicants on, at the last year.
So at the bottom of this, they say that there could be discrimination responsible for this. And right now, lawmakers are seeking to pass a law which, frowns at discrimination for those who come out with a HND and those who come out with a degree, especially, in the labor market. Do you think that could help with the demarketing?
Of course. You see, the demarketing process has been there, sustained by deliberate policies of the government. For instance, in 2016, out of course, the struggle of our union, we successfully saw to the removal, albeit on paper, of what we call entry point dichotomy. What we mean by entry point dichotomy is a situation where HND holders enter the civil service on level 7, while degree holders enter the civil service on level 8. That was resolved by the National Council on Establishment meeting in that 2016 in Mina, Niger State. Now, there's what we call the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling does not allow HND holders to progress beyond a particular point, level 14 in the civil service. That one is still there. And that is what Senator Akinyelure's bill is seeking to resolve. And we are looking forward to this. But like I said, what is also very key is supervisory activities, the right level of regulation, of standards, because what is happening in the states, they are not offering state diplomas. They are also offering national diplomas. You expect that the standards should be the same everywhere.
Well, Mr. Anderson, we could go on and on. We hope that the issues will be taken seriously and that they will be resolved in a timely fashion. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Anderson Ezeibe is the president of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, and he's been talking to us about why they've called another strike.